It's career happy hour. Friday. Come on. Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. We join together and we talk about career, our professions, and make our professional careers better. We put together a trajectory that works for us. We map our futures. These are the kind of things, the kind of topics that I like to talk about. If you don't yet know me, I'm Andrew Beach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate your value to find great opportunities faster, whether you're working or not. I do that through a pragmatic process of branding, planning, and effective networking. I do offer coaching, although this Friday session is completely free. If you want to take advantage of the coaching, you can use the link in the description below to fill out an application and see if coaching with me would make sense. So welcome. Today is obviously Career Happy Hour, and I am happy to see you. Let's see if we can get some folks in the chat to tell us that the audio is good and everything is working just fine. You, of course, can reach me on LinkedIn, more importantly, at Branding Dynamo. That's my handle there. And I'm here to answer your questions. So this Career Happy Hour is really about you and your questions. Anything that you might have, I am happy to answer. Just put that in the chat or the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer that, even if you indeed are watching the replay. I would also like to let you know that one of the ways that we support each other in this community is by sharing our LinkedIn profile address. This gives us an opportunity to say, I'd like to be connected with you. There's 800 plus 900 million, I think, accounts on LinkedIn. It's hard enough to try to connect with people. Some people are on the platform. Some people just park their profile and hardly ever visit that or interact with people. So please, this is a place where we can put our LinkedIn profiles in the chat. And then we have an opportunity to actually interact, to have these network conversations. It's just hard it's hard enough to make this happen without having to have all of this, pretext or, I'm looking for something out of it. No, we're just looking to have conversations and open the door to people and do what we can with what we're given. That said, I also offer during this session, but not every session, live coaching. I'm actually quite thinking about doing these sessions as recorded sessions and broadcasting them on Fridays because we, during the summer, the attendance and the interaction and the activity kind of goes down. So I understand that people have vacations and they go places. So I might actually record these and post them up there if that's going to be okay with you all. I like being here live because it allows me to interact with you more dynamically. But if there's nobody here, then and no chats or questions to be answered, I might as well just see. That's kind of up in the air at the moment, but it could be that we have an opportunity to do that. Now, thank you, Terry, for putting your LinkedIn profile in the chat. Good to see you this Friday. And so, yeah, there is a link in the description that would bring you into the back end of our streaming service. And you could have access to a private chat there if you don't want to make your questions public. That's what I'd suggest. Go into the live coaching link. You don't have to come in and coach, but there is a private chat back here in the green room, as we call it. And you could put your questions there. If you're on Instagram, then you can send me a direct message rather than post something publicly. So that's fine as well. So that's where we are today. And the topic today really is, why do entry-level jobs require experience? And I've seen this post off and on sporadically. I've been on LinkedIn for a long time, and I've seen this post come up over and over again. And it's a good thing that Terry is here because he probably has some input for us and might want to join and say hello, but and that's fine. But really, this came about as a post that I saw on LinkedIn, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here with you if that's okay. And let's see if I can get this adjusted. See if that works. There we go. And I'll get rid of that. So yeah, Brad, full credit to Brad Fitzpatrick. He says, I have a question for my recruiter HR connections out there. I'm trying to understand a trend I've been seeing. Now, let me pause right there. I don't know if this has been a trend. I know that it happens, but I don't believe that it's a trend. So it might be a trend for him, that what he's experiencing in the marketplace as someone maybe new to the job search realm is that he's seeing postings of this nature. And it says a job is posted, let's say help desk L1, for example. It's labeled an entry level, but regardless, it's L1 help desk. As part of the requirements in the listing, 2 years of help desk experience is listed as one of the 2 requirements. We'll get to that in a moment. The other being associate or bachelor's degree. In this scenario, can anyone explain the reasoning behind the 2 years of experience for the very job you are hiring for, especially when it's entry level jobs? And this is a perfectly valid question. And so Brad probably hasn't been in the job market very long. It appears that he's a student at WGU, just by looking at his headline. And so we can go into what does this really mean? And what is the challenge that we're facing here? And I can assure you that this challenge does come up. And I'm looking to help you understand the challenge a little bit better from the recruiter perspective. So what does this mean? Well, I've worked or collaborated with a lot of recruiters in my time as a career coach and someone that's been in the job market before. And just as in any industry, there is the top 1% and the bottom 99. And what you're going to run into in recruiters is varying degrees of professionalism and candidate experience and responsiveness. It's just going to be all over the board. But once you identify a recruiter that you believe is top 1%, that treated you with kindness and respect, that got back to you when you sent emails, please give them feedback that they're doing a good job, first of all. And second of all, put them on your list of good recruiters, so that you can introduce them to other people, so that you can send them job candidates for the roles they have posted that they might be having a difficult time filling. And so outside of that, here's what I've experienced in interacting with recruiters and those in talent acquisition, and it's unfortunate, but many times these job postings are a copy paste. It's what we used the last time we hired this role. Might be a high volume role for them, or a role that has quite a bit of turnover or headcount. And they just copy and paste. They've developed their requisition. It's in their database. They just copy and paste that requisition based on what they had in the last one, which leads me to believe that those aren't really the requirements. Those are what we would refer to as a laundry list or a wish list, or a list of things they would like to have. And as part of the hiring process, we would have to discern what is required and what is desired. I think those are really 2 different things. And so that's a laundry list. And so as I'm reading job postings, I can't really make a judgment that this thing is indeed exactly what they need. It's what they think they need, and we need to verify that. And we'll talk about the job seeker perspective here secondly. I'm just trying to answer the initial question is, what can you explain to me why these things happen? And part of it might be that person, either the hiring manager or the recruiter, had a bad hire. They hired somebody that didn't have experience or didn't have those things, and they made a mistake. And so this is a response to the mistake that they made. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with their perception of what a qualified candidate is. And that means the bad hire that they made was unqualified. And so it might be that as an unqualified individual, they want to weed those people out. They want to weed out the people they believe are unqualified. And that's not out of bounds. I mean, they really need to get to the right people. There has to be, I suppose, some sort of bar that you have to cross in order to get an interview. And what that means is there's a lot of people, I don't know if you've recognized, but some people who are receiving unemployment benefits have to apply to so many jobs in order to maintain or keep those benefits. And that means that there's a lot of unqualified people making applications just to get their payments from unemployment and to have a record that they made an application and that sort of thing. And so there's often unqualified individuals coming and applying to these roles, and it makes it hard for those of us that are qualified to indeed be seen or heard or understood, or to know whether or not we've got the right thing on our resume, or we put the right communication in a cover letter, or that anyone has even seen our application. And so the unqualified are really spoiling it for the rest of us. But that's the system that's been set up by the company. So they get what they get. And if they open the door to that, they're going to receive applicants that are not qualified. And so they have to weed those out. That weeding out process, and it's all a mindset. Sometimes that requires some training on bias in that sometimes a knockout parameter, what they call a knockout parameter, is, hey, if you don't have this thing, you're not qualified, and therefore you're not included in a talent pool to be presented to the hiring team. And so those knockout criteria could be arbitrary, to be honest. It could be the 2 years experience and a bachelor's degree. Those are the bars. And if you don't have those two things, guess what? You're not on the list. And it's unfortunate, but those knockout parameters often are arbitrary and hard and fast for those who don't have relationships in the right place. And we'll talk about that from the jobber perspective in just a moment. But good. Excellent. Good to see you, Terry. Yeah, we might have you come on here in just a moment. Once we get through the topic, if you have anything to add, certainly we can piggyback that. But let's shift gears, because we don't control the recruiters. Let's be honest. We don't control the hiring process. We don't control the company. We only control our own activities and our approach, and maybe even our mindset about what this question really means. And the idea of being entry level and having to have certain qualifications isn't out of bounds, I don't think. And so the barometer then is, at what point do we actually apply? And what point do we feel comfortable that our qualifications would really be a fit for that opportunity? And how many times have we disqualified ourselves thinking we weren't qualified because we didn't meet 100% of the requirements? And that's what I'm referring to on this first bullet. And that is, if I'm a job seeking professional and I see a job that I meet at least 60% of the requirements, I'm going to apply for that job. Now, if I only meet 10% or 25%, I think logically, yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm suited or qualified to be a medical doctor or a surgeon. Why? Because I haven't been to medical school. I don't have any internships. I don't have any track record of success in the OR. And so I'm not a person that's going to go out and apply to surgeon jobs, if that makes sense. So any role that I see, I'm not going to take the requirements as required and not apply. I'm going to say, okay, I meet 6 out of 10. I'm applying, and we'll see what happens. That way, it makes it very easy for me to know which roles to apply to and which ones not to. But it gives me a little more leeway and maybe opens myself up to more opportunities than I was giving myself credit for. And then the other side of this, no surprise that I would maybe advocate for you having a network or networking inside. Now, that can be proactive or reactive. Proactive, of course, better than reactive. But yes, you could, at 60%, 6 out of 10 qualified, apply to that role and then try to find someone inside, a recruiter or a hiring manager or a peer or a family member or someone you're connected to on LinkedIn. It doesn't really matter as long as you make an effort. And so apply at 60%, make an effort to network inside. Now, if you don't get that role, don't stop networking inside. That doesn't mean no forever. It just means no for that opportunity or no for now. And so there's nothing preventing anyone from doing networking inside an organization. So go ahead and do that networking, especially if it's a company you'd love to work for. And contacting the recruiter isn't out of bounds, because you want to verify, validate some of these requirements, make sure you're on the same page. And I've seen people that have reached out to recruiters get interviews scheduled before they made an application. Well, how does that happen? Well, the recruiter likely maybe on LinkedIn and looked at your profile and said, you know what, you got the requirements for this role. I'm going to go based on your profile. Send me your resume. I'm going to schedule the interview on the spot. And so it's not uncommon that happens, just because you made an effort to ping the recruiter on a specific requisition with all the information that you have, and either by email or network outreach or a LinkedIn direct message. Either way is fine. And so contact the recruiter. And something in terms of mindset to consider, in addition to contact the recruiter or anyone you know inside the company, is this concept of the internet. I think we all know that anyone can post anything they want on the internet, and that doesn't make it true. And so as a mindset, even when I see a job posting, as much as I want it to be true, it may not be 100% truth. Because here's what I've seen, at least especially in the digital age and even during COVID and post-COVID times, is that the jobs are evolving so much faster that the jobs of today are going to be gone tomorrow, and the jobs of tomorrow have not been created yet. Therefore, many companies are not agile enough to come up with a job title, job posting, job requisition, whatever it is. They're slow to re-architect their organizational design and to look at how things are put together. And maybe Terry could come on and give us some perspective on that. But I, as a job seeker, again, I don't control that side, but I do have to recognize as a mindset that not everything I see on the internet is true. And so my job is to validate how much of it is true and how much of my experience actually matches that role. And could I be a good fit at 60%? And the answer is probably yes. There's many things that they could tool you up for, or train you into, or get you equipped to do that role from a 60% perspective. And it's kind of counterintuitive, because if you want somebody that has experience, then it's going to cost you more. And so the presumption is, as an entry-level role, you're going to be paid less. I don't know if that's true. If they're requiring somebody to have a college education and 2 years experience, they're going to have to pay that person more. That's just the bottom line. Versus somebody who has a new college graduate, no track record or experience other than school projects. That person should be paid less. That's market dynamics. And so the person that's hired at 2 years experience is going to have to be paid more. Now, whether or not that does happen, again, it remains to be seen, but we just work our process. We reach out to the people, we make our good faith effort, and we try to negotiate the best terms for ourselves. So if that's support that you need, that's exactly what I do. I help people network, discover their brand, find the right people, make an impression, confident communications, all these things that you need, the tools you need to be successful, may not be something you learned or were even taught in college or high school. And I've seen a lot of people, even adults my age or maybe even older. And so it's not age dependent. We just weren't taught these things, and we don't often have an opportunity to practice them either. So if you need support that way, I'm happy to receive your application. Just use the link in the description to do that. And then outside of that, even if I apply to this role, I think the idea is to start over again, go find a better one. If this one isn't for you, go get another one. The idea is to keep going. You have to exercise resilience by finding another opportunity. And just like a bus, if you miss one, there'll be another one down the street here in a little while. So you'll find a better one. And unless we have a mindset that says there is a better one always available to me, then I might put myself in a position to never have a better one. I might have a linear, kind of not so elevated trajectory in my job career path. So always think that there's something better than what you have now. What you have now is a plan B. What you want is a new plan A. And sometimes people are saying, well, this is my plan A. I need to come up with a plan B. No, consider what you have now, plan B. There's always something better. That's your plan A. Okay, good. So maybe Terry would want to come in here today. I always try to come with some value, share a little bit of thought and perspective on certain things. So excellent. Good to see you, Tracy. Thank you for putting your LinkedIn profile in the chat. I do appreciate that. And I'm glad you're part of this community. You seem to be very consistent and showing up here live, and I do appreciate that. And the questions that you have provided have been really helpful. So thank you for doing that. And then, of course, those of you who don't know the venerable, honorable Terry Smith, then here's his LinkedIn profile for those of you obviously on Instagram. Then go ahead and head over to my LinkedIn profile, and you'll see all the unified chat. Unfortunately, Instagram doesn't open their API for you folks to get the live stream. I wish they did. It would kind of be nice to have that. So maybe Terry doesn't have, let me go see. Maybe Terry doesn't have here the link. Terry, the link's in the description. Give it a shot. If you're in the live stream, see if you can find the link in the description to come on live. It should be there. I wish I had two-way chat with LinkedIn because I don't have the app open right now. Well, maybe I guess I could open it. Let me see if this works. It should work. Terry should be here in just un momentito. So, any other questions out there? Go ahead and leave those in the chat. Happy to answer. Let's see. Where are we here? There we are. No, I don't see Terry in here yet. Terry, I'm coming. I'm gonna put the. Let me turn off the audio there. The link is here. Good. Well, it should be there. I believe it's in the description. You might have to click the see more deal. There it is. I'll put it in the chat for y'all and see if we can get Terry in here. I'll put on my my headphones and whatnot. Funny, that didn't come in as a link. So, oh, thank you, Jeannie. I appreciate that. It's very kind of you to say. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons that I do this is so that you can have that opportunity. Let me see. There it is. That's the one I wanted. Yes. Thank you, Jeannie. Appreciate that. Good to see you too, by the way. Excellent. So hopefully Terry will come on here. Terry, is that link working or is it not? Or do you need a new one? Let me get a new one here. Invite guests. Get the old copy. Let me try this again. Try that one, Terry, if you can. It's not making it a hyperlink, which is weird. So you might have to double click it and open it in a new window or something. I don't know how that works. I just know it works. So it came through as a link on my side. That's interesting. Restream. What can I tell you? There's always adding features and doing things here. I'll grab a quick drink of water. Oh, good. Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that. Yeah. So this is an open community. I mean, the idea is, you know, when we put our LinkedIn profiles in there, we're opening ourselves up to being vulnerable and maybe having people reach out to us. And not that we're saying those are all going to be home runs or perfect interactions, but they're at least interactions. And so keep building those communications. I did put a new one in there. Oh, there you are. Hang on, let me get my headphones on so I can hear my good friend Terry. Although I don't see him here. I don't see your video working, Terry. Is your video turned on? See if Terry's here. Terry.
Yeah, my video's on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm not seeing your video though, my
That's
friend.
Weird.
Yeah, do you see a little?
Probably just as well. I haven't shaved yet today.
Your icon on your side anywhere?
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Oh, do you have something over your camera maybe?
No, it's just not.
Well, at least we have audio. Yeah, they say they can hear us. So I'll answer some questions until you get on here, Terry.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to say. I mean,
yeah, sometimes, well, no, you're in a browser, right?
Yeah.
And if you look in the address bar, there should be a little camera. And sometimes you have to authorize the camera to access.
Hang on, I think I got it.
Okay. There he is.
Here I am.
You're one good-looking guy, by the way. So.
Thank you. You're too kind. Also dishonest, but whatever.
So Tracy had a question. Andrew, when searching for job roles, is it helpful to proactively contact contracting companies like Apex or Kforce? So I think there's really two things I would respond to there, Tracy, and really ask for your clarification. Is what do you mean by searching for job roles? Are you looking for the best fit that you want for yourself? Are you doing discovery on how your skills line up? That would be the first question. And your second question would be, is it effective or proactive or helpful to contact companies like Apex or Kforce, the contracting companies? And I always say yes. If you're interested in contracting, sometimes that's a way to get into organizations that may currently have decided to slow their hiring. I don't ever think there's a hiring freeze, and Terry, you could probably validate that for me.
Yeah.
I think there's hiring slowdowns, but I don't think anybody ever stops hiring. They just don't publicly say, I just hired somebody in the back door. So,
yeah, I've had experiences where we've literally had executive level, support for the phrase hiring freeze. And at the end of that fiscal year, we've hired 100 new people.
So there you go. Proof positive that there is no such thing as a hiring freeze.
There really isn't. I mean,
Yeah.
It's, there's so many nuances to that phrase, and so many ways that, savvy hiring managers and savvy leaders just kind of get around it one way or another,
Mhm.
and oftentimes it's nothing more than just, the executive team saying, well, we really, really need to manage costs. So let's really examine every single opening and really determine, do we need this high, that kind of thing. So it's,
So it takes longer.
Takes longer.
Yeah.
So in a certain sense, you call it
which
a
may not
hiring
work.
skill.
I mean, how do you keep a candidate engaged in that kind of scenario?
It's tough, because you have to be sure, you have to be able to be, first of all, you have to be honest with the candidate. Just have to be honest. Look, this position is on hold for the next 60 days. We'd love to be able to see you here in 60 days. We'd love to be able to stay in touch with you, but we also realize that you've got things you've got to go do, right? So you do what you need to do. We want to have this conversation in 60 days if you do. That's, and then you just kind of stay in touch, right? And you hope that if they're really committed to and able to stay that course for 60 days, awesome, right?
Yeah.
But realistically, you can't expect that out of people.
Yeah.
So
any input on the topic that I presented here today?
Yeah. So the whole. I totally get the frustration that the individual was feeling in terms of the entry level, got to have 2 years of experience issue. And you and I have seen this time and again, and so there's a couple of factors to consider. One, there's a very small percentage of companies that really see that first couple of years as being just kind of an entry level experience. And so they tend to kind of conflate the two concepts, right? Because, particularly for somebody coming fresh out of college that's never had any real professional work experience, those first couple of years are really formative. And so they really are kind of, you're entering the world, of work, arguably for, one of the first times in your life. And so companies conflate that, and they say, well, those first couple of years really are just kind of figuring out where the restroom is and figuring out where the cafeteria is and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a certain percentage of that. So and I'm trying to be, kind of flexible on that, because I've run into it, you've run into it, we know it happens.
Yeah.
The other part of it is, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of copy paste that goes on with these job postings, and they depending on the level of awareness, it's not even a matter of experience, it's just a matter of awareness on the part of the person doing the copy paste. They just may have let it slide, and the reality is that there isn't a ton of, check and review. I mean, in this day and age where things are moving so fast, right? I mean, one of my frustrations is reading, news pieces online with misspellings and, grammatical errors and things that and these are respected, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, those kinds of things that are allowing these things to slide through, because we're so busy trying to beat the other guy to the punch in a world where seconds count, that we kind of let that slide. We don't, do things like, I have this edit device on my computer that will allow me to find and correct these things.
Like Grammarly, or even inside Microsoft Word, there's a grammar check. I mean,
there are a lot of different ways to do that.
Yeah,
and
you don't even have to be a grammarian to know that these tools exist and to use them.
and the devil is in the detail in that regard. I
Mhm.
mean, and I just happens to be a personal peeve of mine that and I
So
can
you
think of
wrote a
at least
letter
one.
to the editor, didn't you?
Well, and I wrote something, I put something out a few months ago, and you caught an error in mine, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
crap,
I
but
didn't mean to call you out, Terry, but
no, it's okay, totally okay. I mean, you did it in a very nice, gentle, and concise offline way, which is
yeah,
great. So I was able to go correct it, and
good.
fortunately it was quick. But the point of it is that you start seeing those sort of things consistently, and you start asking yourself, who's really driving this, and how,
Mhm.
if they're not paying attention to those kind of details, what else are they not paying attention to?
Right.
And so those, and so when you see that, 2 years experience, but it's entry level position, and you take the perspective that, yeah, they just copied, pasted, and so forth,
Mhm.
then if you wind up in that scenario and you're actually able to talk to somebody and say, hey, look, to help me understand what you mean by entry level and 2 years of experience, because it may have been a gaffe, and they
Yeah.
may not even know it. The
Well,
other thing,
of
though, that I
course,
wanted,
right? We're trying to come with some grace and some
yeah,
understanding with the talent acquisition function that might be overworked and
yeah.
um
Well, and
and
so from a candidate point of view or from an applicant point of view, when you were talking about this, I really wanted to bring this point up. Um, you know, we live in an age of transferable skills. The great resignation, as they've called it, or the great, reallocation, or the great rethinking, or whatever it's called this week,
yeah.
is a really interesting example of, people maybe stepping back and taking stock, and saying, is this what I want to continue doing? Are there other things I'd like to go do? And if there are there transferable skills that I can speak to in any given situation? And the same is kind of true, I think, in this case here. I go back to, you know, way back in the dark ages when I was just coming out of college, and we were still writing with, inkwells and quills and things.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
It feels like it some days, but there were things I did, all through high school and college. I worked all the way through high school. I worked all the way through college, and so when I really looked at that, even though it was part-time work, there was a solid 6 years, actually more because of graduate school, 6, 7 years at least of experiences that I could then take from and say, I did this kind of work, different context, different format, different scenario, but skills applied that I think would translate well to this job that you have posted, right? And so I would challenge people who say, oh, gee, 2 years of experience, that's not really entry level. There's every possibility that you, applicant, may not be entry level either,
Mhm.
by virtue of what you've done in your life
Yeah.
to that point. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was in college, one of the things I did was I did an extensive internship with the city of Eugene. I was going to the U of O, and
I'm sorry.
I know, it's all I could afford. And my parents lived in town, so
Yeah, so it's easy. Yeah.
right.
They
I
drop you
mean,
off at school too, Terry?
was that?
They drop you off at school too?
They did, yes. They were
Yeah.
very kind that way. On their way to work, their second job, right?
Oh.
but I did this, and it was very valuable because I was able to work on a project that translated directly into stuff that I wanted to be able to do. And that was very intentional on my part. I wanted to find an internship, and I was able to find an internship that fit the bill for me personally. And not everybody gets that
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
also worked for the newspaper when I was in high school, not as a news carrier, but I worked in the office.
Mm.
And so I was dealing with customer calls and customer service stuff, and interacting with the public on the phone, and this is before we had email and stuff.
Yeah, and so sometimes you come out of school though and you feel like those aren't real. I mean, that's not
Yeah,
a real job, right? So
not
I
a real
can't
job.
use that as my experiences.
Yeah, and I would just challenge that thinking and saying, take a step back and think through that, because you probably have brought with you some skills that you didn't even really realize that you were developing in this job that really wasn't a job, but was experience. and those are things to understand. I mean, from that job working for the newspaper, I learned a lot about dealing with people, particularly with people who are irate about something, and we were going through a lot of, it's a long story, but we were going through a lot of technology changes at the time, and the newspaper was late and things were happening that were bad and people were canceling right and left. And, I mean, and so the job in part was to help customers feel better about the experience, right? And that's really, really valuable. And it was especially formative at age 17.
Yeah. When you haven't really had many customer interactions,
right?
Unless you worked,
Exactly.
unless you worked in restaurants or fast food or retail, right?
And it even, the added benefit was that it gave me a different sense of sort of respect for people who work in those jobs. That I'm going to take a moment and say, I might be upset about something, but that's me being upset. That I don't need to put that on that person. And it just helps you kind of change your perspective a little bit. So again, I would just recommend to people, when you see that, take a look at, what the job is and what the skills might seem to be based on your read of the role. And they'll probably tell you, here are some things we're looking for. And if there's things that you have done in your, prior to, your last few years in college or in high school or whatever, as an entry level person, well, just think about that and think about how that can translate to that job, especially if it's a job you really want. Then, time to be creative, time to think about what it is that you have done that you can apply to what you want to do. So
perfect. Well, and there may be some folks here who don't know you, Terry. Maybe you should introduce yourself and at least talk about your credentials a little bit, just so that we know that we're not blowing smoke, so to speak. We've actually
that's some guy that just stumbled in one day and said, "Hey,
this guy in his basement, I don't know. He just showed up here one day."
Well, okay, so yeah, so Terry Smith. I've been in human resources and sort of all aspects of it, including staffing and recruitment, for about 35 years, and then more recently have shifted into doing some consulting, and I'm actually working now in a consulting organization supporting learning development programs for Google. So nice. Yeah, it's an interesting gig. And so this whole transfer of skills thing is near and dear to my heart because I'm transferring skills. I have the benefit. And so in the work I'm doing right now, I'm literally working with worldwide learning management operations. And I've never done that. But what I have done is, thanks. What I have done is, I've led learning teams within HR. I've actually had the experience of leading IT teams, which a lot of this work has to do with information technology stuff, cloud stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I've had the benefit of being on as part of a cloud development team at a company recently. We were doing AWS work, and I was involved in that. So I have a little bit of exposure to that. And then, as one of my colleagues was saying to me this morning, we were having a conversation about the work we're doing. She's brand new. I'm only slightly less new, but then I start thinking about the fact that, well, I did a bunch of work with Capgemini back in the day, and even further back, I did this or that, and her point was, if you really start to think about all the different things you've done in your career, that are both HR related and leadership related and, information technology related, and let's face it, you've been on, you've led, major, what am I trying to say? CapEx projects where you've had to go out and justify spending several $100,000 on new systems. You've done all that kind of stuff, right? And in the context of this HR work you've done, you've hired, I've been in situations where I've hired 100+ people a year over year, so I've gained a lot of exposure in that space. I started in agency recruiting way back in the day. I have to stop and realize that when Apple spun off and formed Claris, I was on that team, to build that, Claris organization. I mean, we were staffing like crazy. And So, I mean, just stuff like that, and all of a sudden I can look back on this and say, when you add all that up, I've worked for Fortune 500 companies, I've worked for small startups. When you add all that up, I've got this mishmash of experience that seems to be playing very well for the folks at Google right now. So
yeah,
that's
where many people inside a big organization are specialized, right? They don't always have a global perspective. Like
yeah, and I guess part of it too, one of the things I've just learned over time is, just ask a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly coming into kind of a new scenario, it's pretty easy to be, to fall on that new guy sword and say, hey, I really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
so there's really no question that you can ask that is way out of bounds, right? Because
yeah.
people say, well,
so
come on, that's a dumb question. No, it's not.
Yeah, I noticed that Tracy had a follow-up question here that says, so there are different scenarios where you may choose to work with contracting companies. Examples are re-entering the workforce after taking a break or career pivot.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I look at contracting firms as one area of the marketplace. And that means that there's other areas, like if someone offered me direct hire, would I turn it down? I guess that's what I have to ask myself. Am I only focusing on contracting firms because I think that's all I can get? Or should I have companies on there for direct hire if that work is available, often with maybe better benefits and better pay and all kinds of things that would be available to you. So I think you really have to think about your motivation for wanting to only focus on one or the other. I believe that you should have both in the mix, and whatever comes to you is what it was meant to be, I suppose. And then you have a decision to make whether to keep it or turn it down. So,
yeah.
Good.
So Tracy has a couple of follow-up comments that I just wanted to highlight too. So, her observation is organizations are recognizing that employee skill sets are having to be developed at a phenomenal rate. Absolutely true. The landscape of work, and you made the point earlier that, 2-3 years from now, many of the jobs that will be available don't even exist right now. Right. And that's how quickly the entire work environment is evolving. And so I think, her point, I think, is that, employees are doing a lot of sort of on the job, sort of skilling up on, newer things and so on. And I think that's true. I think that's happening a lot. And yes, I think the pandemic has exposed some real interesting needs. So I like the power skills as opposed to soft skills. I think that's a much better phrase.
Yeah.
But and one of the things I think that, and we've talked about this, Andrew, you and I before, one of the things that the pandemic has really exposed, I think, is, leadership and management capacity. Hard enough to manage people when you're able to, see them, meet them, sit down in a conference room together, have water cooler conversations and so on, right? Now you throw in this variable that you don't get to have any of that, right? And so it really is exposing a lot of, and it's also starting to generate, and having a conversation like this with, just this morning, with a Googler, it's also exposing the need for a better understanding of career progression in organizations that does not necessarily mean progression into management. I think a lot of companies were starting to realize that pre-pandemic, and I think that's accelerating now because of that, the same level of exposure of leadership skills or lack thereof. I think there's this even greater sort of awareness around the notion that we really need to think about how we career track our folk who either don't want to be managers, which I understand, or aren't really very good at that sort of stuff. And, so it's sort of that 4-by, right? They're good at it, but they don't like it. They're good at it, they're not good at it, and they like it. They're not good at it, and so on. Right? And so what it's creating is this tremendous opportunity for organizations to rethink how they are structured around those concepts. And to your point, Andrew, that you made earlier about agility, a lot of companies just aren't ready for that. They're just, they're not ready for that. And what's really been interesting is to track in the whole pandemic scenario, this notion that, companies are trying to shift gears on their employee benefits so that they're more supportive of things related to mental health and to, sort of crisis management and that sort of thing. all great stuff, all really cool in theory, but the data is starting to show now that not many companies have really been able to quickly readjust their employee benefit programs to be able to support those sort of things. That agility, spills over, or lack of agility spills over into that space as well as just that developmental space. So,
yeah.
Agility is a key thing, right?
I agree. Well, geez, I'm so glad you joined today. We used to have these conversations regularly, and it was really rather kind of fun, and we'd have good interactions too on the chat. So
yeah, well, I'm going to try and commit to being here much more regularly. The way my schedule seems to be working out these days, Friday afternoons seem to be kind of more relaxed, mostly because the people I work with are all asleep in other parts of the world.
So good.
Yeah. So I definitely want to spend more time back in this. So,
good.
It's fun. It's cool. It's great to chat with people. I've, chatted in this way with Tracy before, and we're the dynamic duo, evidently.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a first. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Well, listen, have yourself a good summer, a good weekend, and certainly let's keep in touch, and we'll see you next Friday.
Yes, sir.
All right. Take care. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us this week for Career Happy Hour. Hope you appreciated the contributions by Terry Smith. If you want to, you can certainly leave additional questions, comments, or observations in the chat or in the comments under this video. And we are broadcasting indeed to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter at the same time. I discontinued my stream to Instagram because for whatever reason, me sitting here and not saying anything while Terry was speaking seemed kind of weird on Instagram. So, all right, folks, have a good weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.